I just want to spend a few minutes talking about some services you might not be aware that Wellden Turnbull offer, namely wills, powers of attorney and probate. So, wills. Death is an emotional time, and a will makes it much easier for your friends and family to sort out your affairs when you die. Writing a will can be especially important if you have children or other family members that depend on you financially. If you don't write a will, the law dictates how your assets are shared out, and that might not always be the way that you want it to be. For example, some of the more interesting and perhaps topical legacies that we've read about are the public-spirited donor who left £500,000 in 1928 to Britain. However, unfortunately, one of the stipulations was that that money can only be used when it's enough to clear the entire national debt. So, as that now stands at somewhere around 1.6 trillion, I think Mr. Hammond's going to have to wait a little bit longer before he gets his hands on that. Although my favourite is certainly the donor who left a secret legacy of £3,500 to some of his closest friends, but strictly with the proviso that they spend it on a boozy weekend away. So once you have your will in place, it's very important to make sure that you review your affairs regularly. Circumstances change, the legislation certainly changes. It's just important to make sure that your will is still valid and appropriate. And it's also, might seem obvious, but make sure that the will can be found, but still kept safe and secure. So, powers of attorney. A lasting power of attorney, or LPA, is a legal document that lets you appoint one or more people, who are known as attorneys, to make decisions on your behalf. So this gives more control over what happens to you if you're unable to make decisions yourself, perhaps through accident or illness. There are two types of LPA: health and welfare, and property and financial. So health and welfare, your attorney would have the power to make decisions regarding everyday things like your daily routine, which might be washing, dressing, up to sort of medical care, and if required, sort of arrangements for moving into a care home. They'd also be able to decide on things like life-sustaining treatment. Now, this type of attorney can only be used when you're unable to make your own decisions. With property and financial, your attorney has the power to make decisions about property and money, which could be everyday things, again, such as managing your bank accounts, paying your bills, making sure your income's coming in. And here, where we sometimes see both power of attorneys linking together, they may need to sell your home if, for example, you did have to move into a care home. With this type of attorney, it can be used as soon as it's registered, as long as you give your permission. Now, just a few final thoughts on powers of attorneys, and this sort of applies to wills as well, is it's not just something for the elderly to consider. Accidents and illness can happen to anyone, so it's always best to be prepared. So, coming on to probate, I'm obviously quite glad that Dominic took the question on the new fees. So this is just a short overview. So probate is basically the process of administering a deceased person's estate. Now, this is normally something that solicitors have done, but since November 2014, accountants have actually been able to gain accreditation to do this, and we were one of the first firms to actually get that accreditation. So why use Wellden Turnbull for your probate services? We like to think that we'd be a familiar face at a very difficult time for your families. We'll know you and your affairs through our existing relationships with you. We may have even provided the inheritance tax advice that's now being acted on in conjunction with your will, that again we may have assisted in preparing. We'll also know the relevant individuals in your life, which is always important as beneficiaries will need to be identified. So we really feel that probate is a natural extension of the service that we provide to everyone. So that is the end of our talk. In your pack of documents there is our wills and probate fact sheet, which has a few more bits of information in there that you may like to read. Other than that, if you'd like any questions to me and Simon.